Hello, this is Alex Calvo Garcia. You're listening to the Iron Hour podcast.
Hello and welcome once again to the Iron Hour podcast, sponsored as always by Best Blank Wholesale. It's your host, Barra. A bit of a different format this week because of the quickfire games. Darlington obviously coming up on Tuesday night. We've got our, kind of traditional review coming up with Iron fan Ben Maidment, and then we'll go over to our spy in the camp at the back end of the podcast. Now, Ben, it's great to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good stuff. Now, we've had you on twice already this season. We had you on after 10 games, 20 games, and the plan was to get you back on after 30, but stuff got in the way, mainly me being out of the country. But what better time than after 33 games?
No, none better.
So, how would you review our season so far? I think what we did before was a rating out of 10. What would you give it so far?
We're still up there. My expectation is for us to win the league. And we're in the hunt, we're in the race. So I think I'd go around maybe an 8.
See, that's obviously a lot higher than what you've come in on the previous two. I have to be honest, and maybe this is bucking the trend because we didn't have the best of results at the weekend against Oxford City, but I'm more than impressed with the way the season's gone. My predictions before a ball was kicked, I think I had us down in 5th. So I'm going to level with you, mate. These are exceeding where I thought we'd be.
Yeah, and that's the conversation we've had before, isn't it? It depends where your expectations lie. My genuine expectation is that we came close last year. This time it's time to put it right, get out the league and get promotion.
Don't get me wrong. Now that we're in this position, Ben, I think we'll win the league as well.
Well, I don't know if we're going to win it, but I hope we do.
I think we will. Genuinely, I think based on what I've seen so far this season, and I don't know, I'm sure you have listened to our last podcast because superfan Toby wouldn't have let you get away with it if you didn't. But one thing we mentioned actually was I don't think you could say that Andy Butler's necessarily got a brand, but I don't have a problem with that. He seems to be pragmatic in his solutions to finding ways to pick up points this season.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I did listen to the last one, and it was something that I did pick up on. It doesn't matter how you win, just so long as you do. It was just disappointing. Maybe, as you said, recency bias. It was just disappointing we didn't get the 3 points on Saturday. We had a couple of chances to turn that 1 into 3. And then you look on your phone after the game and you see Chester have won and the results around us, near enough everybody winning. It's one of those where you think, oh, we're not going to look back at the end of the season, are we? And that be one of them games. But then there's been other games where you maybe thought that we wouldn't have picked up all 3 points. You see Gareth before the games and they do predictions. Oh, I'll take a point here, I'll take a point there. And we've gone on and won. So it ebbs and flows throughout the season. But you just go to places like Oxford, then not right up there, but you think, just could do with winning these because these are the types of games that teams win that win the league. And we'll see on Tuesday night because Chester go to Oxford City on Tuesday night. So it'll be interesting to see how they come away.
I fancy Oxford City to get another result on Tuesday night against Chester, and I wouldn't be shocked if at 10 p.m. I'm having a look on live score and I see they've actually beaten Chester. I wouldn't drop dead in shock. You know, probably the bookies wouldn't be the favourites, but it wouldn't surprise me. That's all I'll say because Oxford looked pretty decent on Saturday.
Yeah, they were very well organised. The way they set up, you could tell that they were happy with to take a point, and they were really organised. They made it really difficult for us to play through. There was times where we had to go a little bit longer. They were comfortable letting Evans and Coogan just have the ball for long periods in our own half. And at times, because they got so many men behind the ball, we found it difficult to know what to do. I know Butler touched on in his interview that the surface was really dry, so it was difficult for us to carry any ball speed, and that was something that I noticed that we didn't do enough. We didn't move the ball fast enough when we did have it. We've seen at times this season when we have being able to pass the ball around. Kings Lynn, a really good example. Kidderminster, another really good example where we knocked the ball around and teams couldn't live with us. And on Saturday, we struggled to move the ball fast enough to create any of them really good chances. We still did have a couple of good chances, but just very frustrating not to come away with the 3 points.
It was definitely frustrating. I listened to you on Humberside actually after the game, and one thing that stood out was you talked about these kind of diagonal balls that I think Will Evans was trying. One of them worked, and some of them didn't work. Talk to us about them.
Yeah, so because they were letting Evans and Coogan have so much of the ball, and they sat in their 2 banks of 5, it was more notably in the first half. Evans was hitting that diagonal across the pitch a few times. There was one of them. It was a really nice ball. I was right behind it as he clipped it, and it was a beautiful ball that sort of came in nicely with a little bit of fade on it, and Roberts brought it down. But he just took. You thought he could have just pulled the trigger a little bit earlier. He took another touch, and I think he tried to lay it to. I think it was Scales, who again similar to the one the other week against Scarborough, where he had the shot blocked going goalward. So yeah, it's one of those where when it's played and it comes off, it's a really good tool to use. But when you do it a little bit too much, it becomes a little bit ineffective. They know how to set up against that, and they know how to deal with that.
Did you say one of them didn't quite come off?
Yeah, one went wayward into the crowd, which obviously...
Come on, you're being kind. What happened?
Yeah, it flew off into the crowd. I think it hit somebody. So it's one of those where I'm obviously on the back foot with, but yeah, it's fortunately, thankfully the person was okay and got up pretty quickly. So.
You couldn't write it, Ben, could you?
Well, yeah.
So far this season, we're obviously found ourselves in second place, 3 points behind the league leaders, Chester, and it's obviously setting up that tie in March against them. Now, I'm going to have a bit of a conversation with you, maybe open a bit of a debate. I've said before to you, I think privately, and I've certainly said it on the podcast to the other guys, that week, my personal opinion, based on how results go, I wouldn't be averse to saying 2 points is better than 3. What I mean by that is, looking at the way the table is now, I would take a draw with Kidderminster and a draw with Chester over beating Kidderminster and losing to Chester. So 2 points in my world is better than 3 in that scenario. What do you think?
I remember at the time he's saying it. I remember when and Kidderminster were really close to us at the time. But now you've seen Kidderminster's run of form. They've dropped off. I think if they're in the playoffs still, they're only just in there. I remember at the time when they were really close to us. I understand what your point. I mean, if we just lose one, win one could get away from us, one could not get away from us. But I feel like now with Kidderminster's form, obviously they are vulnerable. I know it's a difficult place to go and get 3 points if they're in and around up the top of the table. So you want to win them games. If we are serious about promotion, Chester at home in front of a really big crowd, it would just really I think it'd be one of those where we could go, right, look, this is how serious we are about promotion. And it's one of those we can put a stamp down, put our marker down and go, right, let's go.
Kidderminster are actually down to 8th now, as you say, just dropped out of the playoffs on 54 points. So they have fallen away. My thinking is more on the fact that if we lose to Chester, I don't want to say it's season ending, because of course it's not. You've still got a lot of points to be won after that. But if there was a scenario where they went 6 points clear with less than 10 games to go, I'm not saying it's panic stations, but that's a comfortable lead for them, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's one of those where how the results around them form. If at that point we're 2 points in front of Chester, for example, then you'd 100% take a point against them. It's all perspectives of how things are going at the time. Just win them both, be 6 points clear, and just win the league.
That'd be the ideal scenario. I'll take it now if you're offering it, Ben.
Yeah.
Right, let's look at certain players that have been tried out this season and things that maybe have or haven't worked. We find ourselves in a situation where we're not quite sure with regards to Danny Whitehall's injury. It might be something as soon as he makes his way back from mid-March. It might be something a bit more serious and he's out for the season. We just don't know. The scan results are coming in on Monday, so by the time this gets to you, we might know a little bit more. But players that have stepped into that vacancy so far have been Carlton Ubazonu and Matt Beck and a little bit of Chris Ray. Of the three, obviously I know limited game time, what you've seen of Ray, which one of the three would you think is most likely to lead our line, or certainly you think would be most able to lead our line if they have to for the next 13 games?
Yeah, I think there's different options in there. They give us a different way of playing, and it depends how we use them. I thought Beck against Scarborough was very good when we were not putting them balls just where he can only win a flick on. If he can only win a flick on and we've got runners and not got runners running in behind, I think he's quite ineffective. But if you get it into that sort of chest area where he can knock it down and he can bring others into play, there was in the first minute against Scarborough where that ball, it was a really nice move. He brought it down on the chest, knocked it off to Beeson, and really Beeson, I think, should have done a lot better. If you use him Beck in that way, I think he can be effective. But if you don't get players close enough to him, if the balls are too high to him, he becomes very isolated because he's not the most mobile of strikers, is he? Where I think Carlton, he's one of those. He's one that's going to go and look to run beyond.
He's the opposite, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's got the pace.
Well, you when he came on Saturday, the first run he made, he was playing on the left-hand side, and the first run he made was across the whole of the defence, which was something that Oxford weren't competing against for that 70 minutes or so that he wasn't on the pitch for. The first run he was on the left wing and he ran all the way across, and the ball came over and it created something different, a little bit of a chance. I did think that. I'm not sure. Is it Ray? Ray. When he came on, I thought
Chris Rea.
Yeah. I thought he looked a little bit of in between of them both. He's not as tall, but he did give like a physical presence and looked as if he was competing for the ball every time it went up. He won a really good header where he didn't really even jump. He sort of was holding the defender off and flicked a header on to Roberts. And Roberts, you're begging for him to hit it on his right foot, but he tries to get it back onto that left. So he looked a bit of an in-between of both. And if you can get an in-between of both, then I mean that could be maybe the ideal solution, unless Whitehall is fit, where I think Whitehall he is pivotal to how we play. He has been for the last 2 seasons. He's got that fight in him, and he's also got that bit of quality as well to bring other players in to score goals himself. So fingers crossed it's Whitehall, but it's a rock, paper, scissors between the three.
Well, a lot's been said so far this season about formations. So let's have a working assumption that Whitehall's out for a significant period of time. Let's leave that open-ended, right? Do you think, because I do you think we should maybe look at a formation change to try and get both those players, Beck and Carlton, onto the pitch? Because as you say, they would probably complement each other because each has the qualities that the other doesn't. So do you think it might be worth looking at a basic 4-4-2 or something where maybe there's a 10 and then a 9?
Yeah, and they've tried that. They've definitely tried that in different points of different games. Although we probably haven't really started with a 4-4-2 or anything like that. Towards the end of games on Saturday, Carlton was on there, Ray was on there, Beck had come off, but that was more of and Roberts was like in the number 10 position towards the end of the game. So it's something that's definitely been experimented with towards the end of games, mainly when we're chasing games. You don't see many teams now that play a 4-4-2 just because of what you sacrifice in the middle of the pitch. I feel that's something that we could improve at times where we're picking up them second balls. There's some times where I feel that turnover of possession, there was a few times against Oxford. If we didn't win the second ball, the turnover of possession, Oxford caught us on the break a couple of times, and I remember them having really one really good chance at the back post, a header that ended up going nowhere, but their striker or winger, whoever it was, definitely should have done a little bit better.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I guess that's quite fair. I don't know really what I think with regards to our front line. I don't know if I'm as worried as maybe others are if Whitehall's out.
I am. I like Whitehall as a. I think you could play Whitehall in a two, although he doesn't play that role very often. I think you could. A point that I was speaking to my friend that was at the game, my friend Jake that was at the game with me on Saturday, and it's when Beeston plays on the left. I really like Beeston. He's been a good player. He is a good player for the club. And it was picked up last season. When he plays on the left, he's got that quality on the ball, but I think you really want to see that in the middle rather than that on the left, because you see Federa when he comes on with. I know that he comes on usually with half an hour to go and he gets the ball and he runs at defenders. He's got that real rawness to run at defenders. When Beeston gets on the ball, he looks to come inside. He looks to come for that pass. Although I would like Beeston in my team, I would maybe like to see Carlton start on that left-hand side.
So would you chuck Beeston up front then? Maybe playing in like a number 10 or as part of a two up front, because he did play there at the start of the season. He scored a few goals.
He did, yeah. It's difficult and it's a conundrum that Butler's going to have to try and work out, because I think he wants to keep Beeston in the team because he's a very good player. But then you've got Clunan, Scales, and Rowley, who I don't think it's that much of a coincidence that we've picked up in the form since he's come into the team. I think he's been very good. So it's one of those where either Beeston's probably going to have to be sacrificed out on the left hand side, or one of the midfielders is going to have to change, because I don't see us changing shape too much. I don't think we'll go too far away from the 4-3-3, because of the last 13 games we've kept 6 clean sheets. So I think Butler likes that defensive stability that the midfield will give you. If you take one of them out of there, you're looking at maybe opening yourselves up. And if when we play Chester at home, we are a bit more open, I think that'll be something that Butler would obviously be quite worried about.
It just feels like all roads lead to this Chester game, doesn't it? It feels like that's where destiny for both clubs is kind of heading. They're both going to stay touch, and that will be it'll be a title decider. That's the way it feels at this moment in time. It feels like everything's building up to that. I guess one other question I wanted to ask you is, when we spoke in the past, Ben, and on the podcast, you talked about how maybe Butler was a little bit lacking earlier points in the season, certainly in terms of formation and his adaptability. What would your opinion be? What would your kind of your conclusion be at this moment in time on how he's done and kind of how happy you are with him as a manager? Because from where I'm seated, he's kind of proved a lot of people wrong and come good.
Yeah, I think you've got to give him massive credit. I was critical of him. His stubbornness is one. I think there's still a bit of that stubbornness there, but he's definitely. We've been picking up results. We haven't lost. I think we've lost once in 16. Is it? But yeah, I remember we were talking. I think it was after the Marine game, before the Marine game. So it'll have been after the Alfreton game was when we last spoke. And you came away from that Alfreton game thinking, what are we playing? And even at halftime of the Marine game, there was a lot of calls for Butler at the time, and maybe that was just a massive moment when Whitehall scored them 2 goals to win the game at Marine.
Well, let's just jump in there, Ben. Let's be honest. 10 minutes to go, or whatever it was, at 1-0 down. I'm not saying he'd have got the tin hat, but it wasn't looking great, was it?
No, 100%. Performances hadn't been great. We were I think we dropped down to around 4th or 5th around the time. So yeah, it was one of those where the expectation of a lot of the fan base is to us to be right up there competing for the top of the league. And at that point, we wasn't. We were 1-0 down against Marine, who were, I don't know if they're still down there, but they were at the time. It was one of those where we needed to come away with something. And yeah, it was probably a big moment in the season. And I think from them games onwards, you've got to look at Butler and give him some credit and say, fair play. He has changed the system, probably what the fans would like to see a little bit more. But as you said earlier, or on the last podcast, it doesn't matter how we win. So long as we win, it doesn't matter.
No, but that is the risk you take. If you don't win and you're playing ugly, then suddenly it can all blow up in your face. That is the risk you take. You have to get results playing that way. Just for the interest of the listeners, Marine up to 20th now, so just one place above the relegation zone and 3 points above Needham, who occupy that 21st spot. So not much has changed for them. They have moved out of that relegation zone, I guess. But the thing that's contributed most to that has been it's caught up with Farsley basically. They rode the luck for a lot of this season, and unfortunately the luck on the pitch seems to have run out. Okay, let's look ahead to Tuesday night's game, a game under the lights against Darlington. The first thing that comes to my mind is the game against Darlington earlier on in the season. Was it November? You and I were stood together. It was absolutely Baltic. Ice had formed on my hood. If you might remember that game, it was absolutely freezing.
Well, we went to Darlington last season and it got called off
30
so minutes before kickoff. And I remember looking at you before the game and you going, look at that patch of grass over there behind the goal where there's a grass bank, and it was frozen. So it's yeah, it was one of those where we were thinking this could be in doubt again, wasn't it? So
definitely. Yeah. It wasn't. I mean, looking at that game, Butler and the club and the team got a lot of stick for that performance. It wasn't great. It was pretty, I wouldn't say poor, but it was just unentertaining. But I said to you, and I said I'll get pelters for this. It feels like a good point. It doesn't feel like a terrible performance. This Darlington side, from what I saw that night, were not terrible. And they had Cedric Main running the line from that night. And he's very impressive for me. Just looking at his goals returned this season, he's scored 8 in 23 now. 8 goals for a team like Darlington, who obviously where are they now in the table? Down in 10th. It's not terrible, is it? He looked like a player who could lead the line. Does that worry you going into Tuesday night?
I mean, I remember when we did play them at their place, they had a few good chances. I remember Ross Fitzsimmons made a few really good saves. When you come to Glanford Park, you hope that it's not going to be the same. You hope that we're going to be the team on the front foot. We're going to take the game to them. Obviously, at the minute, we've got the pitch, which is a leveler for a lot of teams. So we're not going to knock it about as fluidly as we'd probably like. But I'd like to think at Glanford Park on a Tuesday night, they're a part-time side as well. I think that's when it's probably more difficult for part-time sides, when it's a Tuesday after someone will have been to work and things like that. So I'd like to think at Glanford Park on a Tuesday night, we would be okay. And I'd like to think we'd win on Tuesday. Yeah.
That you mentioned the pitch situation there. Does that worry you?
Yes.
Because it's getting worse, isn't it? Like every time we see it. I mean, I thought it was slightly better. Was it the game before the Curzon game, or was it the Curzon game? I thought it slightly improved. But then again, against Scarborough on Saturday just gone, it looked to have degraded again.
Yeah, because we have to find a different way to win. Although with this season, it's not been quite as on the ball football, on the floor football as it was last season. Although it has been a little bit more in recent weeks, I'd say. But it does seem a leveler. If it's like when we've gone away to teams at times. I remember Newcastle Town in the FA, and they left the grass a little bit longer. It was clear that they did that. to make it a leveler, and that's what our pitch is doing at the moment.
We're there going, any chance of any grass?
yeah, a bit of grass would be nice, but it is a concern. But like we've said, we just have to find a way to win. The team that's going to win this league is going to be the team that finds the way to win.
No, well, yeah, it's as simple as that, really. It doesn't really go much deeper than that, then. Do you want to give us a prediction, then, both for Tuesday night against Darlington and how you see the rest of the season going for us?
I'll go 2-0 Tuesday night, and then the rest of the season.
Go on, are we lifting that trophy?
It's the thing is there's so many teams that still seem to be like in the race. You can look probably as far down as, I know Curzon have been on a bit of a barren run, but still they've games in hand, and as we said previously, games in hand don't always equate to points. But there's so many teams still in the hunt, and nobody has sustained a period at the top of the table for a long time. It's ebbed and flowed, and we've been at the top. Chester have been at the top. Chorley, Kidderminster, I think at one point. Everyone's had a go at it.
Are we winning?
I mean, the expectation is to win the league.
We're massive. We're going up as champions.
The expectation is to win the league. So we have to win promotion by hook or by crook. We have to win promotion. So,
listeners, Ben thinks we're going up as champions. We're absolutely massive. Are you going for Good Friday or Easter Monday celebrations?
Well, I had us by Christmas, so I'm out the way. I'm out the prediction hunt. So yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Ben. Just before you get off, do you want to give us an update on your dad, because it was great to see him back at the Attis Arena for the Scarborough game?
Yeah. So if you had to ask me my highlight of the season, that'd definitely be the one. A really, really such a good moment for the whole family. It was nice to see him back at his second home, to be honest. Yeah, it was one of those where my son Toby was there with me and my other brother Tommy was there with me. So it was one of those where it was so lovely to have him back there. Seeing him join in with High Host Gun United before the start of the game was one of those moments that will stay with me forever. So yeah, a really, really good moment. And hopefully we can take a trophy back to him at the end of the season.
Wouldn't that be something? It was fantastic to see him. It was an emotional day for us all. I think it was an emotional day for your dad as well. And of course, this goes without saying, but the Iron Hour podcast, all Iron fans, we send our best wishes to your dad, Martin Maidment, on his recovery. And of course, we're all with you, mate. So thank you for joining us today. And please send on our best wishes to your dad. And can you also send on my best wishes to super fan Toby Maidment? Absolute legend he is. I saw him repping his a picture of him repping his Iron Hour podcast t-shirt. Absolute little hero. So if you, I'm sure you will be listening to this, Toby, at some point. You're an absolute legend. Thank you very much for your support. Any final thoughts, Ben, just before you get off?
Up the iron.
Thank you very much, Ben. Well, that piece there with Ben was recorded on Sunday evening. Since then, we've obviously had the news that Danny Whitehall will be out for 4 to 6 weeks, backdated 2 weeks from the injury. So he could be back in an iron shirt as recently as the Kidderminster game. We're hoping for that. Somebody who'll probably be relishing the fact that we are a man down is Darlington fan Andy Park. How you doing, Andy?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. How are you doing? All right?
Yeah, I'm all good. I'm buoyed by the news that our star striker might not be out for too long. No. Speaking of star strikers, Cedric Main is doing absolute bits at Darlington. I think he's got 8 goals this season so far, and he was the main threat for you guys when we played you early on in the season.
The man is a complete nuisance, and I'm buzzing his hours. It's not just about his goals either. His hold-up play and how he brings people into it. His creativity is unbelievable. The bloke is strong as a fox, well, a lion kind of thing. He's unreal, and just you might see it tomorrow. I think the Scarborough game on Boxing Day, he didn't score, but he had 3 assists, and that shows that his overall game is unreal.
An absolute unit. Like I say, he stood out for us on that Tuesday night. Let's talk about that game. Obviously, our last meeting was a lot better visit for us than the one last season, it has to be said. A cold night, and if we're being honest, you guys were pretty unlucky not to come away with 3 points.
I thought we shaded the game. That just shows how much of a better place we're in from last season, and that we can match teams like yourselves, full-time teams, and the fact that we can go up against the likes of Scunthorpe and the Kidderminster and stuff like that and hold our own, get points. Or in recent case at Kiddie, we've got 3 points. Shows that we're on the right foot going forward. I think on that night we did shade it. Like you see, we were lucky not for all 3 points, but let's hope we get something down your place tomorrow.
Well, let's hope not. But in terms of what we can expect in this game on Tuesday evening, I'm expecting a tight affair, and I'll tell you for why. We, obviously without our star striker at the moment, and this might surprise a lot of listeners, but Darlington have conceded the third least goals in this league this season. So if you look at goals conceded, Darlington are all the way up in third place. Above them only ourselves, Scunthorpe United and Curzon Ashton. So are you expecting something similar, and how has that defence been this season?
We've been solid. In my opinion, we've got one of the best goalkeepers in the league in Pete Jameson. He's dropped back down from Harrogate in League Two. Back to he played for us years ago. We've got Elliot Forbes at the back. Got Scott Barra, who's ever young at the big age of 38, 39-year-olds. He's like just Mr. Consistent, and I'm expecting the same. I'm expecting a tight game. I really think it's going to be one goal in it between us. I don't see many goals. It's either going to be a 1-0 or 2-1. It's going to be a tight game. Both teams don't concede a lot. We don't tend to score a lot at the moment either, but we've got that unit at the back that I think we can hold our own. But you carry that threat of Mark Beck, and although he's not in form for yous, we know exactly what he's about and what he can bring to the table on his day. So we've got to be wary.
Is that something that Darlington fans might be talking about then, Mark Beck? Are they seeing him as a real threat?
We know what he's like. We know what his threats and how to play to his strengths. I don't think you have quite played to those strengths as yet because you've got all-rounders, whereas he was our main man. So yeah, of course we're going to look at him as a threat. Like, the bloke's absolutely huge. He can dominate the ball in the air. He's similar to Cedric Main in some ways, how he bring players into the game. It's not just about how he scores goals. He used to have likes of Adam Campbell playing off him. Obviously you've got Carl Roberts and stuff like that who can just change games instantly. So Mark,
it's like having a cheat code, mate.
It's unreal. I'd love to have a player like that in the team who can just score like that. But Becky, yeah. I'm expecting him to be a nuisance.
So you picked up there that we're probably not playing to his strengths, and at Darlington, certainly other clubs, teams have played to his strengths. What do you think we can do to get the best out of him? What style of play do we need to adapt to?
I noticed in the game against us up at our place, you just kept flicking the ball in the air, expecting to win everything. Although that is part of his game, he's good on the floor as well. Putting the ball in there, he will win headers. Just putting that ball in that final third and just let him attack it. If you're putting them balls in that 6-yard box, he will attack them with some aerial threat. I've not seen any games, but I've seen he scored 1 or 2 goals, if that. So maybe not playing to that strength to him, but he can be and will be. He'll turn good for you, I think.
Just 1 goal for us so
just
far
a 1
this season. Yeah. And do you remember a couple of seasons, well, quite a few seasons ago now, when Torres scored that first goal for Chelsea and the stadium went mental?
Yeah.
Just like that. Yeah.
So you need just a bit of confidence. And obviously you're saying Whitehall's out for a while. Maybe he's got to start taking his chances if he gets his game, because I've seen you've got a couple of strikers on loan now as well. That Chris Ray from Tamworth, he played against last year. He's a handful as well.
Well, this is it. What we seem to have is an abundance of options, but none of them are the full package like Whitehall is. So they'll each give you something different. And so my working theory is you're probably going to have to play 2 strikers to get what Whitehall gives you. And then obviously you're sacrificing something in the midfield, aren't you?
So I'd say Whitehall is an all-round striker, so I'm glad we're not playing against him tomorrow.
Let's talk a bit more about Darlington then.
Yep.
You picked up on Jameson, your keeper. Like you say, bit of a coup really to get him. Are there any other players that stand out and we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, well, obviously we've touched up on Cedric Main and what he's like. I think everyone in this league knows what Cedric brings to the game. We've got the ever-consistent Mr. Hatfield in midfield. He can just quietly go about his business, just dominating the ball, breaking up play. He occasionally shots in the 30-yard in the top bin.
Well, he's got 7 goals this season from midfield.
I think he's our top scorer, to be totally honest. He just comes
second, just behind Cedric Main, yeah.
Yeah, he just comes out of nowhere with these bangers. I think the game's just slowing down, the game's going nowhere, and he just pop up with a 30-yarder. We've just signed a striker from Middlesbrough. He's only 18, 19. Bakary is absolutely. He's only played 2 games, but you can just see he's going to go a long way in the game. He's young, he's powerful, he's hungry, and as soon as him and Cedric hit that 1 goal or 2 between them, that connection is just going to bounce. And I think that's going to be a little bit of an oomph to push it in those players' pitches.
What kind of formation do you play then? Do you play with the 2 strikers or just the lone man?
It used to be just with Cedric, just on his own with them. You normally it's a bit like a 4-3-3 with 2 wingers on the side of him. But since this new young lad's coming from Barra, we're playing with a 2, and the connection's forming. They haven't scored between them yet, but on Saturday, if they weren't too greedy, we could have scored 4-5 on Saturday. But they seemed just to go for it on their own. But if just squaring the ball would have scored.
You know, we talked earlier about how you've conceded so few goals.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The first thing my brain goes to is, right, they're going to get 2 banks of 5. They're going to make this really difficult. It'll be horrible to play.
No, I don't think we're that team who just sit back and invite the pressure. We can dominate the ball as well as any team in this league. Some games we will sit back. Obviously, we've just played Kings Lynn. They were full time, so we are going to be a bit leggy tomorrow. You're full time, so it's going to be a tough game. But we won't sit back and just let you dominate the game. We'll attack you. We'll use Scott Barrow and we'll use Ben Headley and Callum Griffiths on the wings. They'll bomb forward. We've got Jazz Rivers on the wing, so we've got plenty of threat about us. It's just getting those opportunities in a game tomorrow against you. We're going to have to take what we get, because I expect you to dominate a lot of the game with it's going to be 3,500 behind you.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Yeah. Let's talk about that win. Fantastic win against Kings Lynn on Saturday. And surprisingly, against a full-time team, you got the lead early and just outdid them. Just like a bit of a fitness job or something.
Yeah, honestly, we got to go in the 5th minute. Decent little finish from Cal Griffiths right back. And then we didn't just stop there. Like I said earlier, if Cedric and Hassim had just passed this ball, squared the easy ball instead of going for goal, we could have scored 4 or 5 easy. It's just, I was expecting a lot more from them, and we just didn't get it. Like Kings Lynn they seem to just sit back and invite the pressure on from us. When they're in the playoff picture as well, I expected them to come at us, but they didn't.
No. In terms of what you can expect this season, then obviously you're currently in 10th.
Yeah.
Playoff ambition still?
I think that's always going to be a target. Otherwise, what's the point in playing football? We've got 2 or 3 games on some teams above us. Win those couple of games in hand. We're back in it. We finished last season admirably after being bottom for such a long time, so this year's already better. But I like to think that we're going to keep on pushing. We've got a really tough month coming up. We're playing Saturday, Tuesday until the end of March now, so it is going to be tough. We are going to lose some games, so we need to take the most opportunities that we get coming our way. And being honest, I'd take a draw right now at your gaff.
Well, that's it with the congestion pile up. With the
Yep.
Northeast, obviously having that little bit worse weather.
Yep.
You've got those games to play for sure. Last time we spoke, I think I said quite honestly, yeah, I'd take a point. It's got to be all 3 this time. The form we're in, what we're now going for the title, which maybe I don't know if I'd have said that in November. I'd have probably said let's just try and finish in those top 3 spots. So you get, I mean, finish second, you get the home ties all the way through to the playoff final. So yeah, I'll be honest with you, Andy. I think we've got to win.
Yeah, I think as a fan of Scunny, you've got to want to win and expect. I think being at home is going to help you. And obviously, I've seen your forum people still aren't happy, and I'm like, you're second, you've got the points off top. Like
I don't know if we're not happy. It's a different. It's perspectives, right? Isn't it? For me, I come at it from a different point. So a lot of people thought we'd win the league.
Yeah.
So if we're not winning the league, they get angry. But I'm like, I thought we'd finish 5th. That was my pre-season prediction. So on paper, that's what I said. So now that we're in the hunt, I'm like, we're never going to get a better opportunity, because in terms of points that you'll need, this season will probably be a record low.
Yeah, the league's tight this year. Like anyone like Curzon were top for a few weeks ago, and then Kiddie have faltered away. So like you say, if you want ambition to win the title, you've got to beat the likes of Darlow and stuff like that, and especially win your home games.
Hit us up with a pre-prediction then. What are you going for?
I said it's going to be tight, so I'm going to go 1-1. I reckon we'll take an early lead, and I think we'll get leggy, and I think you'll come back into it.
I think it'll be a really close game. I'm going Scunny win 2-0.
Well, as long as I have a pint tomorrow, I'll be happy.
Indeed, won't we all? Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for coming on, of course, Andy. And thank you for listening to the INL podcast. As always, a huge thank you to our sponsors, Best Blank Wholesale. And we'll see you at the back end of the week for the next episode. Up the iron.